Hello and welcome to Live from America podcast. This is Hatem alongside me, Noam Dworman. It's becoming very famous on YouTube these days.
I became famous?
Yes, sir. You're getting there. You're getting there.
Well, you're getting attention. I don't know if that is fame, but every now and again somebody of note will say, this Gnome guy's okay.
All
right,
I'll take it.
I mean,
actually, be careful what you wish for because it's probably not good for me.
You mean
whatever.
for the collaborative, maybe?
Just in general, like unless you really want to be famous, there's nothing good about being famous, right?
Just don't get canceled.
The only thing good about being famous is to get chicks, or because it translates into cash. If you want to do personal appearances, and
you have that backwards, Dan. When you're married, fame is the worst, is the biggest impediment to getting chicks. You can't dare get chicks when you're famous when you're married.
And also, Dan Naturman, a comedian, very funny, finalist at America Got Talent.
Semi-finalist.
Very talented. To me, you're always finalist, Dan.
I love a good joke, so thanks, guys.
And our guest of honor is here, Dr. Stephanie J. Wong. She is a licensed clinical psychologist, BTS ARMY, very proud, host of the award-winning Color of Success podcast, and author of Cancel the Filter, Realities of Psychologist, podcaster, and working mother of color. She discussed a lot of topics, including mental health, parenting, podcast, and more. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, what do I mean by BTS?
No, I know what you mean.
No, that's what I was asking. Yeah, what do you mean by BTS ARMY?
So it's a Bangtansonyeondan, and it's a K-pop group that is a global phenomenon. They shut down the New York City subway with Jimmy Fallon, and they did a whole dance in the subway station.
They're very famous boy group. Like
from Korea. Wong is a Chinese name, if I'm not mistaken. Not that means you can't.
Here we go.
No, you're right. You're right. So actually, I really got into K-dramas. I decided to take Korean so I didn't have to pause the Korean drama while I was in the bathroom. That was my motivation. But I started really getting into BTS in 2017 when they debuted in America. So there you go. I've been taking Korean class for like 7 years.
Well, Damsahamniga for coming.
I'm sorry?
Damsahamniga for coming.
Kamsahamnida.
Yeah.
Oh, nice, Dan.
Well, that's all I know. I had a roommate who was Korean.
Well, you know how you were like talking about.
By the way, that's all he knew also.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. Dr. Wong, thank you for being here. So you deal a lot with, I know when I talk specifically about like parenting and mental health, especially, but I think like right now with the world going crazy with all these wars, with people taking sides and all the news, all the social media, all the stuff, like how do we deal with it? And how do we, especially for the younger generation, I'm not a parent, Noam is, Dan is not either. So how do you deal with
Thank God.
Yeah.
Dan is trying to get chicks and money. And
well, I think when he said roommate, he's not going to get any checks with it.
that roommate from decades ago, but yes, I mean, I don't have one now.
Okay, there you go.
Okay, because then there would be a joke there too. No, there's a lot going on in the world, and we don't need to review everything that's going on, and we're also in an election year, so that's going to bring a whole circus to the show and to all the things that are happening with people's mental health. But obviously, I'm very invested in making sure that my kids are mentally healthy. And that's becoming more and more challenging just in general in the school systems, because with the messages that are coming down, I mean, we're fortunate to live in the Bay Area, but there's still obviously anti-hate crimes going against Asian Americans, as well as now with the wars going on, anti-Semitism, and just a whole bunch of just overt discrimination out here. And so I think it's really important that we have open conversations with our children. Of course, we have to be informed consumers or think about ways that we're communicating it to them. We're not going to show them a YouTube video or a reel on someone getting their face smashed in, of course, but I think those threats are really realistic to at least have conversations about.
I will say that when I see an Asian person that's violently anti-Israel, I feel a certain betrayal. I thought we had an understanding. I thought we were kind of, together.
Well, we are together, but I definitely think that racism, or isms, as I would say, they're very complicated, right? Just because you're part of a minority group or underrepresented group doesn't mean that you don't have your own biases, or there's not generational transmission of these biases.
I feel like, with parenting or with,
Well, which we don't want to say that being anti-Israel means that you're anti-Semitic, just to be, to read Hatem's mind. But
well,
that's not.
I was just gonna say that.
I just feel we go to you. I thought
I'm,
yeah.
I'm a bit offended that we didn't mention Islamophobia, but it's okay.
Yeah,
but
too.
who wouldn't be scared of you guys? But go ahead.
But you mentioned it, so let's add it into the mix for sure.
There you go. So I feel like a lot of people, especially like the younger generation, getting their information from social media. And I feel like, I don't know, if you're a parent and you're going to say like, hey, don't watch this or watch this, they're going to want to watch it more. And also they spend a lot of times around people that either teachers or influencers. I don't mean social media influencers. I mean like coaches or whoever,
Sure.
that they included. How do you control that? How do you tell them at the end of the day, hey, this is what I want you to understand without, being too much?
Well, I mean, my kids are a lot younger. I don't know, about others, but I think limiting and having shared accounts is helpful, because we kind of see what's on their algorithm and what may be coming up, and sitting next to them. I mean, I'm not watching all the YouTube shorts with them, but just kind of seeing that trend of what they're consuming. Same with us, though. Same with adults. I mean, what is helping or harming our mental health? And if I notice that they're saying certain catchphrases or picking up certain things from their friends, I volunteer at field trips because my coworker said this is the greatest way to spy on your kids, like, and seeing who their friends are and like what they're talking about. So I think we just have to be really mindful of balancing like helicopter parenting, and also being present to see what they are consuming, and then letting them know like, hey, this is not okay to say or to think because it's XYZ. But that's again where parenting comes involved, and as well as community. So I have a great middle school teacher for my oldest daughter who is teaching the history that of Asian and Asian American individuals within her classroom. And so that's a very fortunate position to be in, to have these conversations about our ancestors as it's paralleling in the classroom. So it really is a community effort to navigate this.
Noam, how do you deal with your kids with social media, especially with the Gaza war and all that?
It's scary. So I mean, right now it's only my daughter who is really into it, and I have all sorts of surveillance software installed on her.
Are you serious?
Yeah, she knows about it. I have
You
Google.
are really Israeli, huh?
Family Link. She only allows a certain number of hours, and she doesn't have a. I don't know. Right now, it seems to me she's not yet. She's 12, but she's not yet really getting into stuff that I have to worry about. She's very open with me about what she's looking at. She doesn't act suspicious when I walk into the room in terms of what she's looking at and stuff like that. But I'm waiting for it to become a problem. My two sons are not really. All they watch is Fortnite, the YouTube videos. They're not really into the social stuff. My daughter, is pretty chill. Knock on wood, I mean, I could be on a month from now saying how everything upended in my life, but right now, I think she's all right. But I'm very, very, very worried about it. Yeah.
Dan, any thoughts on that?
Well, I don't have to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, you're specifically about social media in general, or about the Gaza war in particular? I'm
Sure,
not
social media in
precisely
general.
sure what you're asking.
I mean, the stuff that we parents are dealing with, like between the porn and the social media and the fentanyl and
Yes.
all the various things that can reach in and ruin your life, your of a good like not of a troubled child, of a perfectly normal, child who was on a trajectory to be perfectly well adjusted in their lives, not have any particular issues, but these intervene in a way that when I was a kid, marijuana was basically the worst thing that could intervene in our lives
Sure.
then. And if you were like a kid who had a pretty good relationship with your parents or whatever, like kind of cliche indicators of mental health, every kid I knew that had that kind of profile grew up very nicely into, and very well adjusted adults. But I'm just petrified. Now, there's so many things that you can't. It's very hard to guard against. There's a tremendous random element to it. Now, she could be at a party and somebody talks her into, she's had a few drinks and someone talks her into friggin' fentanyl, and all of a sudden she's addicted to, who knows? It scares the
The
shit out of me.
issue isn't taking fentanyl on purpose so much as having it laced with something.
No, I don't think that's I think the lacing is, I mean, God forbid somebody would lace it. No, the issue is that, that in a moment of lowered inhibitions, when I was a kid, we might throw eggs at the house. Like there was only so much trouble you could get into, but we didn't have there was no party I ever went to where there was heroin and fentanyl around that somebody could say, hey, just give it a try. It's awesome. I mean, you have 100,000 people dying of drug overdoses. We didn't have that before, right? Like something is changing. These are not people who were laced. We know people, Greg Giraldo, like we know people who've died from this stuff.
Yeah, but Greg was somebody who had a terrible addiction problem.
Yeah, I guess, but a lot of kids are dying. And then, and then social media, like already my daughter has had some issues with friends of hers who have been mocked a little bit, small potato stuff on social media, but it's awful for them. It's just awful.
Devastating. Yeah. And
can I say one more thing? I'm talking like you're the expert,
go for
but
it.
it's forever. So like if somebody made fun of you in class, there was a half-life to that. It was horrible. And then the next day you remembered it. And 3 days later, it was completely forgotten about. There's no video of it. It's like, it just fades into memory.
Yeah.
But when somebody does this on social media, it's forever. And you can never shake it. And screenshots of it. And, literally 30 years from now, you're still going to be reliving that mockery. It's awful.
Dr. Wong, how do you, I know you work a lot with also social media and stuff like that. And how do you make them control this? Because the main problem for me, I think that people are getting their news and like facts from social media now, that's a major problem. So how do you tell, not only kids, but everybody, like, how do you deal with people? Like, I feel like if you woke up and check your Instagram, it can put you either in a great mood or in a bad mood,
Yeah, I tell a lot of my clients to really be mindful and set boundaries for yourself. I mean, waking up and opening your social media is probably not going to be the best for your mood in general, because even if you have positive things on your algorithm, more than likely you're going to be scrolling for a little bit and something's going to pop up that may trigger some negative emotions. And so even when you're going to bed, I even go to the extreme for some people of, hey, put it in a drawer, or actually put it in your nightstand and close that drawer so that you're not looking at it an hour before bed. But you bring up a really good point about getting the information, and there's so many people out there that are just spouting a whole bunch of bull crap. And it's like, what are their credentials? Like, this person is trying to coach you to manage XYZ, and what experiences and what professional experiences do they have? And so I think being informed consumers, I'm speaking more for adults, of like kind of questioning that a little bit. Like, is this, reputable information? Do I trust it? Is there science behind it? I think we've kind of gone away from that, where it's just what's on social media is what you believe. And I've noticed this with the kids too, because they said, I'll ask the question, well, who did you hear that from? And, the 9-year-old will be like, Google. Like, that's an authority, is Google. But as we know, like, Google aggregates from all these different sources, and they're not necessarily like vetted to tell people like this, and probably we would have an uproar, vetting people to say, oh, this person is a reputable person. So, and not to their fault, but.
I mean, kids were always victims of the, just misinformation from their parents, right? But who were never that well informed. But there's a peer pressure aspect to the fact that they're supposed to now adopt and react to this misinformation. So it's not just that they're exposed to, like, let's just, Hatem, I'm sorry, let's just say for the sake of argument, misinformation about what Israel is doing. But it's also a social event that now, they're supposed to get on board with that, and they're supposed to comment on it. If they don't comment, how come you're not commenting on this?
Reaction
and so
videos, all that stuff.
Yeah. So it's beyond just that they're getting the wrong facts. It's that it comes with all that pressure to adopt it integrate it into your behavior, everyday life. I've known stories of adults who, like, been asked, how come you're not posting about how you feel about Israel and Palestine? And they're like, why would I, like, like, is something wrong with you? You're supposed to tell us how you feel. And for kids,
I 100% agree with you. Like, it's, like it seems like you're not acceptable in certain tribes unless you react.
I'm going to close my door 1 second. Go ahead.
And not only react, but okay, now that Noam is gone.
Now that Norm's gone.
You were gone at the same time. I tried to talk about
I was under the desk, but he couldn't hear you. You missed your opportunity.
Yeah,
I did.
No, I said
he was gonna say something about you, but you're back.
It's like, now that Noam is gone, this episode is about Noam. We're trying to analyze him, actually.
I saw on Twitter just a few minutes ago that there's a poll. I'm gonna get it right. 30% think that Israel's committing genocide. No, I'm sorry. 35. Fuck. How was it? 35. 35% believe that Israel's reaction is too harsh. 30% think that Israel is committing. What's the matter with my logic here? It's the opposite. 35% think Israel's committing genocide, but only 30% think that Israel is reacting too harshly. They're not mutually exclusive. That's why I couldn't figure it out in my head. So in other words, the genocide meme is so powerful that the youth overwhelmingly think that Israel's committing genocide, but they don't think that Israel's reacting too harshly. Like they don't even understand. Obviously, if you think they're committing genocide, you have to think they're also reacting too harshly, right? And you could,
unless you think genocide is the appropriate response.
I guess, yeah. So, but it was skewed by age, and this is exactly what's going on. Like they're just being inculcated on certain platforms. I think really TikTok, especially, to accept this notion that Israel's committing genocide. Now they don't know the first thing about anything, right? It's like a brainwashing.
But it's also, on the other hand,
I know you believe they'd be brainwashed if they said Israel wasn't committing genocide.
I was actually the one that inducted that 35%. But on the other hand, I feel like also TikTok and other social media are helpful in a lot of things like that. We see facts sometimes, like accident. We can catch, like, a lot of hate crimes are caught on social media or TikTok or stuff like that. I'm actually just watching the documentary on Netflix about the Boston Marathon bomber, and a lot of the information came from the people with the phones. That's how they called the guy on tape. So it can be either way, but like you said, the source is important. Like, who is it, why is it, and the agenda behind it. So Dr. Wong, you also mentioned when we start, the election is coming. Looks like it's going to be Trump Biden again. And that was time where a lot of people stopped talking to each other. Some families don't get together, and then with the wars and how do you deal with that anxiety, depression, all the stuff, And
I apologize, guys. My camera is on the fritz. I have no idea why. But yeah, I talked with a lot of my clients about having to really think about how they're interacting with their family, because some were just hardcore going against like just all the isms were coming out, right? And people in the Bay Area, many folks, I'm not saying all, were trying to put their foot down with their family about this is not okay. And they would just either stop talking to each other or get in these arguments. And so I just brought it back that sometimes it may be better not to engage in those things over family dinner.
Yeah.
And really go back to what you can talk about in terms of shared experiences or understanding. I'm not sure if you can really change some of these really ingrained beliefs or thoughts or understanding. However, I think coming back to that idea is that we do want to be safe and keep people on this planet and feeling like they can walk down the street without being harmed. I think that is a basic thing that I hope most people can agree on. Now, the way in which, people do that is very different, right? And so I think self-care is a huge thing. Oh, yeah. Needs a
He's
hug right
homesick.
now.
He's homesick today from school.
Oh, hi.
He
again,
can't hear
this
you.
is,
Gonna
you
say
know,
hi?
these issues that
Hi.
divide
Say hi.
families, are of course nothing new. I mean, Ben Franklin
Oh,
didn't talk to
thanks,
his
people.
son because he was a loyalist. So that's going
Yeah.
back a few years. And then Vietnam War, I mean, that would divide families. And
You know what bothers me? Hi, Benny. You know what bothers me the most is that, and this is one of the things I'm proud about this podcast is like some people will just take like one position and everything that person does is wrong, or everything the other person does is right. They never do both. We have videos here from this podcast years ago, and I give credit to Noam that he said stuff years ago, and I have it in video that became true after that. And people were like,
I did.
yeah. Especially with the Trump era and stuff like not everything that he say is wrong or right. Same thing is like he cannot, kind of like what we said before to bring it back to Israel. It's not like you against Israel is not anti-Semitic, stuff like that. Not everything that, dealing with COVID, like there's so much things that information came later and people will still be like, oh no, but he's wrong all the way or he's right all the way, like people don't have that thing of being like, you know what, I can understand that humans can be different, can be both, right and wrong, and you have to you have to like look at the facts. And this is one of the things that we do here all the time. It's like, look at the facts, look at like, and analyze it from a place where it's like, you have no emotions to it, but
yeah, and that's where I work, right? In the gray area, because if I thought that people were can't change versus change,
yeah,
then we can't really have flexibility. Hello?
I got the whole family here.
about social media, especially for kids with parenting, like how do you look at stuff that they can look that we have no control over and they can form their opinion. And a lot of times I see, I don't know if Dr. Wong agree with me, a lot of times I see the kids are the opposite of their parents. They almost want to look at the other side of the story. Is that true?
I think so.
No, Dr. Wong, go ahead.
No, you please. I mean, I don't discourage that, right? I don't want my kids to think like what I say is the be all and end all, right? I want them to think and analyze from multiple perspectives. Now, I would hope that I tell them this all the time now that they're a little bit older, that I do not seek to raise a-holes. Excuse me, little one. But
I heard that.
yeah. I'm sure you've heard that word before, maybe, given I just met Norm for 15 minutes. But I think it is very important to let them know that kindness is at the core of what we're talking about. That doesn't mean that, you villainize people for different points of view. But at the same time, if some person's behavior is showing pure hatred, and that's something that maybe you might take a harder stance on.
How would you teach them to be neutral and look at the facts if you are invested in one side? Like, let's say in the war or the election or whatever, I know, Noam and Juanita for a long time, for example, and I know they are very, neutral and they go for facts and stuff like that. But if somebody doesn't know them, especially, you know, who, you know, they'll be like, oh my God, you know, but how do you teach, you know, your kids or your, you know, friends to be, look at the facts themselves, you know?
I mean, I think it comes back to empathy of, and I think one of the folks that I had interviewed, a Harvard professor, Alan Jenkins, made this comic graphic novel, 1/6, and really humanized a lot of the different perspectives of that day. And part of it is why do you think, really asking those questions of why do you think this person is experiencing that or has that perspective, right? And even with the current war, it's like, depending on someone's experiences, they could have that perspective, and understanding that it's not all or nothing. The other part is I liken it to a lot of the movies that we watch. I think pop culture can really help kids and adults understand. Like, I don't know if you're Game of Thrones fans, but one of the names in the show might be one of my daughter's names. But luckily she survived in the show. That we're waiting for the end, like, oh crap, we're gonna be in a storm if she, you know, doesn't make it. But with Game of Thrones, even probably almost all the characters except maybe one or two that I can think of, you can see both sides, that there's some humanistic aspects to people, and some of the things you're like, oh my God, like what are you doing here? But the fact of the matter is humans are complex and things can coexist. And we just talked about that in the beginning of the show, is that you can be a part of a minority group and still have, you know, commit some isms, racism, sexism, etc.
No, we shouldn't. I mean, you know, we would expect that most kids, at least when they're young, are going to have the beliefs that their parents have. You
Sure.
know, I mean, you know, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Juanita, do you have a question about that aspect, parenting and social media?
Well, I don't know. To what extent do we want our, you know, should we say to our kids, you know, I don't have any, but well, daddy believes or mommy believes that, you know, that this side is right, but you could go form your own opinion. I mean,
that's a good question.
Is that the best way to parent, or do we want our kids in some measure to be on the same page?
Well, there's a problem now because I don't really tell my kids, even though I don't know if you believe it because I'm so opinionated. I don't really tell my kids what I believe and stuff like that. I tell them what to think, but then like I do.
Yes, you do.
What do I tell? What do I tell?
Thank you, Ben.
What do I tell you to believe?
What does he say?
What I said to believe. But my son Manny, I don't know what he's seeing on YouTube, but he's like, he said, you know, Joe Biden doesn't control the border, and I'm like, Manny, what, you're only 10.
No, but I tell you what, something.
I said,
Manny,
and he's spouting out all this stuff.
Dr. Wong, I want to ask you something because Manny brought up a good point. The news, you know, because many mentioned that a lot of times his dad watched the news. So the news, parents leaving the news on or watching a certain channel. Like, for example, if Manny was my kid, he'll be watching Al Jazeera, right? Over there, he's watching Fox News. So, I mean, you have to be aware of what, you know, you're watching while your kids are around or not around, or specifically in certain incidents. Like, well, what do you recommend with that? Especially the news is coming all over now, you know.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I think it was a joke watching Fox News, but I think it's important to have varied exposure to different channels and so forth, and just kind of identifying what is the intent behind it. Because I think, you know, it's funny that you say that, because my husband was teasing my mom and was like, the only people I know who watch the news like on TV are you and my parents. So I think people are getting their information from a lot of different sources. But again, thinking more so about what the intent is of watching these things. Is it to stay informed? Can we really get the information from other sources that may be more reputable? Are we just trying to like mindlessly watch something and just leave it on? And, you know, does Norm mean to like leave it on so Manny can kind of, you know, get some of the information, or it was a mistake? I don't know. But I think a lot of times we use social media and any kind of media for different purposes. Some of us just want to laugh.
Yeah.
Wait,
Go ahead,
I want to
Juanita.
say something. I do want to say something.
So Jenny, go ahead.
The idea of not letting your kids watch the news is so crazy to me because when I was a kid, like I just turned 50. When I was a kid, we had assignments where we had to clip articles out of, and bring them to school and write about them because the news is supposed to be a source where children, families, Americans can trust the facts. That is no longer the case, right? Because every news station is pretty biased.
Is there
What are these kids? And on top of the news stations being biased, they get a lot of biased opinions from school, from their teachers. It's just insane.
Yeah. And to add to, go ahead.
At home, I try hard not to discuss these things with my kids because it's so all over the place. They can't trust information from any source, not the news, not their teachers, not social media. It's just all over the place.
Manny has a hand up. I don't know if we want to recognize.
Yeah. Just to add to Anita's point also, is, it used to be the news at the news channel when we were younger, but now it's entertainment shows. And they admit that, it's not facts and stuff like that.
Clickbait.
Yeah.
Right.
So
it's not real journalism anymore. It's crazy.
Cancel the filter. And basically what I talk about is the realities of being a working mother of color and, all the things that go along with it, because I'm 20 seconds from losing my shit all the time. And I'm sure Juanita can kind of relate to that, is that we're supposed to have this perfect image of, balancing or family and career and, keeping everything together. And clearly we have emotions. We have so many different things that are going on in our lives. And we have to make decisions every day as to where we're going to divert our energy. And so I do talk about my family history. I do talk about my decisions in terms of, doing podcasting, doing clinical work. The people that I meet have really given me, again, different perspectives and been able to destigmatize mental health in our communities because, even to this day, there are a lot of folks in ethnic minority communities that are embarrassed and they feel stigma about seeking help.
I would add that the one area in which I think it's valid to be prejudiced is in seeking out mental health practitioners. I've always insisted that any therapist I go to is Jewish because I don't want him thinking to himself, "Oh, Christ, this Jew is fucking nuts." I want them to be able to relate to me as much as possible. A lot of Black Americans distrust white doctors. Medicine is very intimate. You're literally naked.
I know that there's a lot of culture also don't look at mental health or psychologists like it's something to do. It's like a weakness,
Yes.
What's your experience in that? And also, you said in your book is the reality of psychologists. What do you mean by the realities of psychologists?
Well, I talk about being having a restraining order against somebody. That's
well, you have another one against Noam tonight.
Noam's fine. He's harmless. He's just, he's passionate. But I think, maybe that's his superpower. But
order against somebody. Can you share anything?
Yeah. We deal with people that have severe mental illnesses, and sometimes there's delusions and hallucinations, and some people can take it to the extreme. Now, it was one out of over a decade of working with people that this has happened, because I want to put it out there that it becomes very conflated in the news. And so I really do talk about, though, that there is an occupational hazard. You're hearing people's long-standing issues, and sometimes, and they may not be taking their medications, they may not be taking treatment recommendations, and things happen.
Naturman, do you want to, I don't know if you want to share that experience that you had that you told us before?
Yeah, but I don't know that that's relevant to the discussion.
The therapy thing?
Yeah, I know. I got this. They jolted me with magnets to try to knock away the bad thoughts.
But, is this TMS?
Yeah, TMS. It did. I don't know if it worked. It helped a little, I think. I don't know.
So, you're dealing with treatment-resistant depression is what you're saying.
Well, at the time, yes.
I think everybody's
that's relevant to the current discussion.
a lot of people dealing with depression and they don't even know it, right?
It's biopsychosocial though, right? There are genetic aspects that make you more predisposed to maybe experiencing depression, anxiety, etc., psychosis. So I think there are aspects of individual, genetic, and social factors, of course. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a blanket thing. Some people that, may not be making as much money, like, yeah, can be the happiest people that you know, and giving. I've noticed that people that generally in my life that have had less are just way more giving than people that are more well
Absolutely.
off. So
That's
they
100%
understand the
true.
struggle and
Right.
they help.
Yeah.
Did you ever like, Juanita, did you want to say something? Sorry.
Well, I think I agree with everything she's saying. It's such a mixed bag. It's not just one thing, right? There's economics, it's cultural, it's how you were raised. I was raised in a house where my mom, everything was like, suck it up. You do what you got to
Mhm.
do, and a lot of minorities are raised that way. And
And then that's why she treats her husband.
Yeah.
It's true. She's like, suck it up. I suck it up.
Yeah, the Trump voters I know, I don't know.
he's such a drama queen. I'm like,
She knows.
The Trump supporters I know, and this is a function of people I know in general, are people that are in pretty good financial shape.
Sure.
Either
Look, Robin Williams killed him. I mean, there's people obviously.
yeah.
we have to. We had a lot of requests to do like we have to cover suicide one day because it's just there's I think 3 comedians recently just committed suicide. One right before, and it's just like for no reason, and not for no reason, but I mean they were successful.
For no
have
evidence.
gigs coming up and stuff, and it's very it's crazy. It's too
There
much.
was a Korean celebrity huge in the industry that just committed suicide as well. And there was a lot of sociocultural factors that went into that as well. But that's a whole nother show. But it really is. And it's interesting because I'm with comedians. And so it's like what is it about that though, where like you are telling all these jokes? Are you trying to, for some folks, are they trying to cope with pain that they're experiencing, or
No.
what is that like?
Is suicide more prevalent in comedy? I mean, obviously I know comedians. So when somebody commits suicide that I know, there's a good chance it's a comedian, but is it statistically valid that people in the arts are more prone to suicide? It may well be. I don't know those numbers.
I mean, of the people I've known in my life who've died young, they were hugely overrepresented in musicians and mostly comedians, as opposed to, an equal number of people that I'm aware of in other professions. None of those people have died in my life, or, so.
I think you have to put a layer. I think the more layers you have, you don't seek help. You think something is okay. I don't know. It's
And when it comes to comedy, most of the comedy of the comedians have are really based on something truthful. And then it turns into some kind of comic something, but it derives from something that's really happened to them, whether it's good or bad. They talk about good and bad things. Some comedy is very dark and you go, oh my God, where'd they get that from? It's probably based on something they actually experienced or,
And
What about
there are studies showing a correlation between depression, manic depression, and even psychosis and creativity.
Yes.
So I don't.
What about psychology?
I wish I could be Dr. Wong's therapist.
My therapist is fantastic.
What's that?
My therapist is fantastic. She's amazing.
He could be someone's therapist. It's hilarious. Okay.
Yeah.
I would tell you, we love Asians in this country. You're the most admired people. Everybody we embrace you. Everybody loves you. Be happy. Things are great. You're
Norm,
famous.
I wouldn't hire you. You're not hired.
You're the highest. You're the highest. You're not hired. You're the highest earning people in the country. You're so overachieving that they try to limit you. They literally try to prevent you from getting, which is the opposite of, which I think is outrageous. But this is how you're leaving everybody in the dust, including the Jews. You have.
I don't think that's the basis for their therapy.
Well, they have wonderful neighborhoods and children, and it's like
Stick to what you know.
You just
right? Talk about the
you
Jews.
should be so happy. I feel the same way as a Jew.
I mean, I'm in a very good place in my life. So
that's right.
That's great. I talk more about what I mentioned, which is occupational hazards and dealing with people's pain on a day-to-day basis, I think that can wear on you for sure.
Yes.
And so it's really important at like the best therapists have their own therapist. I say that all the time. And you need a space where you could talk about things that you don't put out there.
That's a huge point you just made. It's very interesting. If being surrounded by people who are miserable all the time makes you miserable.
I mean, we know that from The Sopranos. She had a therapist for, you know, the therapist. But I mean, like, does it,
I think all
unless
therapists have a therapist.
I'm tired of Noam trying to white-splain how Dr. Wong should feel.
Thank you, Dan.
I
Dan's
mean,
hired. We're different. We're different, but you're hired.
Well, I mean, there is a legitimate analogy, is there not, between certain experiences as the Jewish and Asian experience, although we're not visibly identifiable for the most part, you know, less physically identifiable, but other than that, there's quite a lot of similarities in our experience, and you know, and actually what she's describing is not unheard of out of Jewish mouths, right?
you're still not hired. No matter what you tried. But you know, like I said, I think, you know, a lot of time, like in this, you know, just like a conversation like this, it can get through into you, and people need to be aware of what's, you know, who they're around, you know, who they talk to, and you know, just to their mental health is huge. Last question, what I have recommendation for people in general to do to feel better during this tough time? Beside Israel, stop bombing everybody. What else do you have? Well,
Drugs.
I think one of the big things I keep coming back to, though, is building supportive community, because I would not, even when, you know, raising my children, you know, they're fortunate.
Imagine Noam is my friend. Imagine my life.
We could talk later about referrals. But
Hey, listen, I'm a good friend to him. All right.
I know you are. And
vice versa, of course.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be doing this show and talking about these topics if you weren't, right? There's a built trust here. And so but this is also a microcosm of community, is that you guys can disagree, you guys can talk about things. And I was, you know, obviously there are a lot of people that rely on that ability to connect with people that really accept them. And like I said, my kids are very fortunate to have all their grandparents alive. And I'm fortunate because I don't have the sole burden of pickups, drop-offs. Actually, my husband and my mom do that. And so there's this idea that if we can rely on one another, and when shit hits the fan, that's a clinical phrase, you have someone to go to really talk about these things, and, you know, and cry and get upset. And at the same time, then you recenter yourself and say, okay, how am I going to approach this topic? But to push away emotions and say that you're not afraid of the current political climate, or that you don't, you know, my mom went to work. I was like, you better bring pepper spray, because she works, you know, in retail, when all the elderly hate crimes were going on. And so to think that, like, to feel accepted and to feel protected by a community is really helpful, particularly to protect our elderly. It's fine.
You come to New York at all?
I spoke at the New York Public Library. I want to go over there. So when I go over there, that would be awesome to film in person.
Yeah, when it comes or I was to film in person would be fine, but I was also just meant you should just come down to the club and hang out with us.
Oh yeah, that would be fun.
And Hatem's still friends with me despite my Instagram, right?
Of course, and I still follow you.
Well, Hatem's Hatem's still a happy-go-lucky guy. Like, it sounds like there's very little you could do to push him away as a loyal friend. So
he walked around with an LVAD. He was within, you know, hours of dying, and then he had a heart transplant. And then when he finally got the heart transplant, he caught COVID before back in the recovery. I'm like, how you doing? He goes, oh, I had the transplant. And now I have COVID. But how are you? how's business? I'm like, it's good. like really, like, just like, I don't know where he gets that equanimity from.
I think whenever you in pain or like you go through something and you in a area where there's a lot of people are sick and you see people like worse than you always appreciate where you are, and it makes you appreciate your friends even
But
more.
who was
and
worse at that time? Who was worse than you? You didn't. Your heart wasn't
Right,
worse.
the people that didn't make it, the guy that gave me the heart. How about that?
No, but the thing there is a wisdom to. I know you gotta go. There is a wisdom to what you did, even though it probably was not calculated. Which is that, despite what they say, people could only spend so much time listening to your problems, about your health problems, whatever it is. Like it's not that they're not concerned, but at some point a conversation becomes, all right. But because you were able to, of course, update us about how you were and what we were concerned about, but then go on to have basically normal interaction. It wasn't like, oh God, I need to call Hatem now. This is, I gotta steel myself for a half an hour of hearing about his medication cycle, which is what many people who are ill do. So
He's probably tired
you
of talking about it.
you probably got more positive attention because of that. Without, again, I don't think it's calculated. I think it's just the way your personality is. But I know people, they put on a good game, but it's hard to listen to somebody talk on and on about their health.
I know you're talking to me. Hello. You're preaching to the choir.
Do you ever have like earpieces, like iPad or something, and while you're listening and you go like, what?
No, I don't do that. But I think it is important that what you're saying is right, is like you have to at some point redirect the energy you can validate and so forth, but there also has to move towards action. So, okay, you're sad, and let's talk about what we're going to do about it.
Oh, I got one more question for you though. Because I was gonna say, have you ever had the bubble over your head? But if this Jew woman doesn't shut up, but when you feel the notion that white privilege is a real thing, which, by the way, is a whole nother conversation. You're lucky my father's dead. He didn't get to say that to him. But anyway, doesn't that make it difficult for you? Like, do you ever find yourself like rolling your eyes when some white patient is going about their problems, when in your mind it's like, this bitch has white privilege and she don't want to be like
well,
how could you avoid that?
There are internal thoughts, and not in that specific instance, but I think it's important to continue to self-reflect on your counter-transference, right? And your transference.
I always say,
yeah, in that, like, what you are putting out has to be a lot more careful is this therapeutic, right? If you're saying, hey bitch, I don't want to hear this, I don't think it's gonna like really, people are gonna fire you, which is an issue. But more so is like,
although it might be salutary, it actually might be good.
Sure, sometimes maybe it is, but the effectiveness of like the treatment you're providing, I don't know if like putting that those words out there. But I think it's important to talk about and notice a difference, and if that would impact the therapeutic relationship and alliance moving forward, it's still good to like open up that conversation. And some people will be honest, some people won't, but there's a feeling there.
All right. That's a good way to end.
Where people can find you, or they can follow you and all that, and where they can buy your book, Cancel the Filter. So Dan, you want to go first? Where people can find you?
Just do it. You can find me online, Dan Naturman, Naturman.
And Dr. Wong?
You can find me at colorsuccesspodcast.com. You can follow all our links, and the book is on Amazon.
And it's really good podcast. You could definitely check it out. And you can go to our Instagram and you can see like a little clips. It's very good. Thank you for being here.
On behalf of my biracial children.
Good night, biracial children.
I think they're triracial.
Thank you very much.
Bye, man.